You have been told that forgiveness is a virtue, a divine act that heals wounds. Yet I see in you the weariness of one who has forgiven so much that the thread of your own identity begins to fray. This is not forgiveness in its sacred sense. It is a kind of slow self-erasure, as if your shadow has learned to wear the mask of mercy while quietly devouring the marrow of your being. There is a curse upon the empath who cannot discern where compassion ends and self-betrayal begins. A curse that whispers, give again and again until you forget who you are. And you do, you become a ghost, lingering in the ruins of your own boundaries. The world loves the empath because the world loves a mirror that reflects its brokenness without judgment. People will come to you like moths to a flame, sensing in your gaze the soft promise that you will not condemn them, that you will hold their pain as if it were a sacred relic. But here is the danger in holding their pain. You begin to carry it as your own, and in carrying it, you risk merging with it until the line between your soul and theirs dissolves. This is not love. It is not healing. It is possession, emotional, psychic, archetypal possession. In my work with the unconscious, I have seen countless souls who wear the mask of the forgiver, yet burn with unacknowledged resentment beneath their skin. Why? Because they never truly forgave. They only surrendered themselves in the hope of being loved, in the hope that their sacrifice would bring peace. The empath's curse is not simply that you forgive too much. It is that your forgiveness is often a plea for belonging, a desperate call to be seen as good, worthy, or indispensable. And in that subtle transaction, you lose the raw authenticity of who you truly are. The shadow of the empath is martyrdom. It is the archetype of the saint twisted into a grotesque shape where every act of compassion is tinged with self-destruction. The unconscious plays cruel tricks on those who believe they are entirely selfless. For beneath the surface of relentless forgiveness lies a hidden complex, a wound that says, if I do not forgive, I will be abandoned. If I do not give, I will not be loved. This is the voice of the inner child, still standing in the ruins of some ancient disappointment, still believing that love must be earned by carrying the sins of others. You see, the unconscious has a language of symbols and dreams. If you dream of giving your heart away, bleeding endlessly into the hands of others. This is not a divine vision, but a warning. It means your psyche is telling you that you have become a well with no bottom. The archetype of the wounded healer is alive within you, but the wound has begun to define you more than the healing. You have mistaken being drained for being holy. Ask yourself, who are you when no one needs you? Who are you when there is nothing left to fix? So many empaths have built their entire identity upon the brokenness of others. Like vines that climb upon crumbling walls, and when the walls fall, they too collapse. The curse of forgetting who you are is rooted in this: you have lived so long for the reflections in the eyes of others that you have not seen your own face. I tell you this with both compassion and a touch of fire. Forgiveness, when true, liberates both the forgiver and the forgiven. But what many of you call forgiveness is not liberation, it is endurance. You forgive not because your heart is free, but because your heart is afraid. Afraid of conflict, afraid of being unloved, afraid of the silence that comes when you finally say, no more, You have mistaken the absence of anger for the presence of grace. They are not the same. Do not think I am condemning forgiveness. It is a path of transformation when it emerges from consciousness. But unconscious forgiveness, automatic, compulsive forgiveness is not grace. It is a shadow dance. It is the echo of old patterns, perhaps inherited from the archetypes of the Great Mother or the suffering Christ, both of whom carry the weight of the world in their arms. Yet even these archetypes, when misinterpreted, can lead to self-annihilation. To embody the Great Mother without wisdom is to bleed yourself dry. To follow the suffering Christ without understanding the resurrection is to remain nailed to a cross of your own making. You must descend into yourself and ask, why do I forgive those who harm me? Is it because I truly see their humanity, their suffering, their own unconscious patterns? Or is it because I fear that if I do not forgive, I will become like them, cold, cruel, unworthy of love? The empath curse is this fear, this illusion that to protect yourself is to become heartless. But boundaries are not walls of stone. They are sacred lines drawn in fire, declaring, this is where I end, and you begin, this is my soul, and it is not yours to consume. The process of individuation, the great journey of becoming whole, demands that you see the shadow of your own compassion. It is not enough to see yourself as the loving, forgiving soul. You must also see the rage that lies beneath, the resentment, the exhaustion, the silent cry that says, why do I always give more than I receive? This is not selfishness. This is truth. And truth is the first step toward wholeness. The collective unconscious is filled with stories of the empathic figure, the one who bears the pain of others. In ancient myths, this figure is often both healer and victim, savior and scapegoat. Think of Chiron, the wounded centaur, who could heal others but never heal himself. You, too, may have inherited this mythic pattern. But here is what the old stories rarely tell you. The healer must turn inward if he wishes to survive. You cannot endlessly pour out your essence without replenishing it. Or you become not a healer but a hollow shell, carrying the wounds of 1,000 others. Forgiveness must be an act of consciousness, not compulsion. It must arise not from fear or obligation, but from an inner alignment with your soul's truth. And sometimes the most profound forgiveness is not forgiving the other, but forgiving yourself for having betrayed your own boundaries, your own needs, your own voice. I want you to imagine for a moment that you are standing in a great hall of mirrors. Each mirror reflects not your face, but the faces of those you have forgiven, those you have carried in your heart. You look around and realize you do not see yourself anywhere. This is the moment of awakening, the realization that in giving everything, you have vanished. And the question arises, do you have the courage to step into a mirror and shatter it, to reclaim the fragments of your soul that have been scattered across the lives of others? The empath's path is not meant to be one of endless suffering. It is meant to teach you the language of the heart, the rhythm of connection. But connection without self-awareness becomes entanglement, and entanglement is the shadow of love. Love without boundaries is not love but consumption. It is a devouring archetype of the mother who cannot let go of the child, or the lover who demands total surrender, leaving no room for the other soul to breathe. You must face your shadow, the part of you that has grown addicted to forgiveness, that believes your worth lies in how much pain you can endure. This shadow is not evil, it is simply unconscious. It is the part of you that was once a child, standing in the chaos of others' emotions, learning to survive by absorbing them, by smoothing them, by forgiving before you were even asked to forgive. But now you are no longer a child, and the survival patterns of your childhood must not dictate the destiny of your soul. You must understand that the psyche is not a simple vessel but a labyrinth, and each turn of that labyrinth holds a memory, a wound, an archetype that has shaped you. The empath's curse is often born not in the present, but in the deep corridors of the past, echoes of ancestral patterns, forgotten sorrows that whisper through your blood. You forgive because somewhere within you there is a voice, not entirely your own, telling you that forgiveness is survival. Perhaps it was your mother's sadness that taught you to soothe others before they broke. Perhaps it was your father's anger that taught you to silence your own needs to avoid the storm. Whatever the origin, these patterns are not merely psychological, they are mythic. They have wrapped themselves around your soul like ancient vines. When I speak of individuation, I do not speak of selfishness. I speak of the sacred duty to become who you are, not who the world has told you to be. If you forgive without discernment, if you dissolve into the suffering of others, you cannot walk the path of individuation. You remain caught in the web of collective patterns, repeating the same stories, the same martyrdoms. And do you not feel it? That heavy ache in your chest, that quiet voice that says, I have been here before. It is because the unconscious is circular. It will lead you back to the same crossroads until you awaken. There is a moment in every life when the soul cries out for recognition. It is not the cry of the ego demanding praise or attention, but the cry of the inner self longing to be seen for what it truly is. The empath often misses this call because they are too busy seeing everyone else. They can sense the shadows in others, the pain, the fear, the unspoken wounds, but they are blind to their own. This blindness is not an accident. It is the cost of always looking outward, always scanning the horizon for the next person to save. Let me tell you a truth that may sting your endless forgiveness, does not always heal the other. Sometimes it enables them. Sometimes your compassion becomes the soil in which their unconscious patterns grow unchecked. When you refuse to hold someone accountable for the pain they inflict, you are not liberating them, you are locking them into their shadow. True compassion does not mean saying yes to everything. Sometimes compassion says no. Sometimes it says, I will not let you harm me or yourself any longer. The archetype of the warrior lives within you. Though you may have buried it beneath layers of kindness, the warrior is not cruel, but it knows boundaries. It knows when to fight, when to stand its ground, when to say, this is enough. The empath's curse is that you feel the warrior within you. You believe that if you set boundaries, you will become cold or unloving, but the opposite is true. Without the warrior, your love becomes a wound that bleeds without end. With the warrior, your love becomes a fire warm, bright, but contained, so it does not burn you alive. I have seen this curse play out in countless lives. A woman who forgives her partner again and again for betrayals that cut her soul. A man who sacrifices his dreams to carry the burdens of everyone around him, believing that this is noble, when in truth it is a slow death of his spirit. The unconscious delights in such patterns, repeating them like a dark melody until the individual wakes up and says, no more. It is in that moment of refusal that true healing begins, because to heal is to return to wholeness, and wholeness includes both the giver and the protector, both compassion and power. Think of your dreams, those strange, symbolic visions that arise from the depths of the unconscious. Have you not dreamed of drowning, of being chased, of trying to speak but finding no voice? These are not random images. They are messages from the deeper layers of your being, telling you that you are losing yourself. The dream of drowning is the dream of the empath who has absorbed too much of the world's sorrow. The dream of silence is the dream of the one who has lost their voice in the chorus of others' needs. If you pay attention, your dreams will tell you when it is time to stop forgiving and start reclaiming. I want you to imagine, right now, a moment in your life when you forgave someone who did not even ask for forgiveness. Did it feel clean? Like a release? Or did it leave a residue, a heaviness in your chest? That heaviness is the sign that what you call forgiveness was really a form of self-abandonment. You let go, not because you had transcended the pain, but because you did not believe you were allowed to hold it. You turned the other cheek, not out of strength, but out of fear that if you did not, you would be unloved. And so the pattern continued, feeding on your light. The unconscious is not a cruel enemy, but it will force you to face your patterns until you integrate them. If you keep forgiving without boundaries, life will send you more and more people who demand your forgiveness, who push your limits, who test the depth of your well, and one day you will find the well is dry. That day is both a death and a rebirth. It is the moment when the empath finally says, I have nothing left to give. In that emptiness, the soul begins to speak, and what it says is often startling. Now, at last, you can begin to know yourself. There is an archetype I wish to call forth here, the phoenix. This ancient bird that burns to ashes only to rise again is a perfect symbol for the empath who has been consumed by their own giving. You may feel like ash, like the remnants of all the times you forgave and were left broken. But the phoenix teaches us the true power comes from the fire. The fire is not the forgiveness itself, but the inner confrontation. The moment you say, I will not live like this anymore. Out of that fire, something new is born, something fierce and whole. Do not fear your anger. Anger is not the opposite of love. It is the shadow of love. It is the voice that says, I matter too. The empath often suppresses anger because they believe it is destructive. But suppressed anger becomes poison. It seeps into your dreams, your body, your heart. It can manifest as exhaustion, as illness, as a sense of being perpetually drained. To honor your anger is not to lash out, but to listen. Ask it what it wants to tell you. Often it will say, I am tired of forgiving what should never have been done to me. The path forward is not simple, but it is profound. You must descend into your own depths, into the caves where your forgotten self waits. You must face the child within you who learned to forgive as a way to survive. You must tell that child, we are safe now. We do not need to carry everyone else's pain. This is the work of the soul, the work of reclaiming what was lost. And as you reclaim yourself, you will discover a new kind of forgiveness. A forgiveness that is not blind, but conscious. A forgiveness that comes from strength, not weakness. It will no longer be about forgetting who you are, but about remembering that you are whole. Even when others are not, you will no longer forgive because you fear losing love. You will forgive because you have love, not for them alone, but for yourself, for life, for the mystery that we all share. There is a strange liberation in the moment when you finally see the pattern that has held you captive. The empath's curse is not a fixed destiny, but a veil. And once you lift it, you begin to sense the raw power of your own soul. For too long, you have believed that your worth is measured by how much pain you can hold for others, as though you are an endless chalice, meant only for pouring out, never for receiving. But the psyche is not designed for such imbalance. Even the deepest well will run dry if it is not replenished by living waters. It is time to return to the source within you, the fountain of the self, the archetype of wholeness that stands beyond all wounds and roles. I speak to you now, not as a distant theorist, but as one who has walked among the shadows of the human soul. I have seen how the unconscious demands balance. It will take what you do not claim. It will fill the void you refuse to acknowledge. If you will not own your anger, your fear, your desire for boundary, the unconscious will manifest them as external forces, people who violate you, situations that drain you, encounters that mirror your own unspoken. No, these are not punishments, but invitations. The universe or the psyche will not allow you to remain asleep forever. At some point, the pain of forgetting who you are will become greater than the fear of remembering. There is a peculiar magic in shadow work, and it is this: when you dare to face the part of yourself that is tired of forgiving, as a part that wants to scream or retreat or set fire to the illusions of your relationships, you discover that this shadow is not your enemy. It is the gatekeeper to your truth. It is the one who holds the key to your lost voice. I've always said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. For you, the empath. So this means looking into the mirror of your own exhaustion and admitting, I am not infinite. I am not here to be consumed. Dreams often reveal this turning point. A dream of a locked door, and behind it, a wild animal pacing. That animal is your untamed self. The part of you that has been silenced by relentless compassion. If you open that door, you may fear it will destroy everything, but in truth, it will destroy only what was false, what was never truly you. To integrate a wild animal is to reclaim the instinct that says, I deserve to live, to thrive, to stand in my own light. In the collective psyche, we are taught that forgiveness is always noble, that Turning the other cheek is always the path of the better soul. But this teaching, when stripped of nuance, is a distortion. True forgiveness does not erase the need for justice, nor does it require you to invite harm repeatedly into your life. Forgiveness is not a perpetual open door. It is a release of resentment, not a denial of truth. You can forgive someone and still walk away. You can forgive and still protect your own heart. In fact, this is the only form of forgiveness that leads to healing. When I worked with patients who were consumed by guilt or resentment, I would often ask them to imagine a dialogue with the person they struggle to forgive or with themselves. Not a polite surface conversation, but a raw, unfiltered confrontation. This exercise would reveal the truth beneath their endless giving, often a deep rage, a sense of betrayal, and a longing to be recognized as a full, complex being, not merely as a source of comfort. For the empath, such an exercise is transformative. It reminds you that you are not just the healer, not just the giver. You are also the one who has been wounded and has the right to say, "This is enough. I ask you now, who are you beneath the roles you play?" If all the people you have forgiven were to vanish from your life, if no one needed your compassion, who would you be? Many empaths find this question terrifying because their identity is entwined with being needed. Yet true individuation requires that you discover your essence apart from others' needs. You must learn to stand alone, to see your own reflection not in the eyes of the broken but in the quiet depths of your soul. There is a dream image. I often return to a great ocean, vast and endless. Most empaths live as though they are small vessels, scooping up water to give to others, afraid that if they do not, the ocean will vanish. But the truth is that you are the ocean. Your compassion, your ability to feel, is not meant to be confined to endless acts of sacrifice. It is meant to be the living current that flows through you, nourishing you as much as it nourishes others. When you begin to see yourself as the ocean, you stop fearing the waves of anger or grief. You realize they are part of your wholeness. Do you know what happens when an empath forgets who they are? They become a reflection of everyone else's shadows. They absorb moods, fears, unspoken traumas, until they no longer know what belongs to them and what belongs to the world. This is why you feel drained, because you are living as a boundaryless mirror. But mirrors do not live, they only reflect. You must shatter the mirror to discover the being behind it. And this being, your true self, is not fragile. It is not defined by how much you can endure. It is a living archetype of both love and strength, of both tenderness and fire. When you reclaim this self, forgiveness becomes a conscious choice, not a compulsion. You no longer forgive to avoid conflict or to keep others comfortable. You forgive because your heart is large enough to hold truth and love together, to see the wound in another without offering your own body as the bandage. The path forward requires a kind of initiation. In ancient times, initiates would descend into darkness, into caves or labyrinths, to face trials that would strip them of their false identities. This is what you must do now. Symbolically, you must enter the inner cave and confront the truth. You are not only the gentle, forgiving soul, You are also the one who can say no, who can walk away, who can let others face their own shadows. This is not cruelty, it is sacred balance. The first step is awareness. Notice when you forgive automatically, without feeling it in your heart. Notice when your forgiveness is tinged with fear or exhaustion. Notice a tightness in your body, the heaviness in your breath. These are signs that you are betraying yourself in the name of virtue. The second step is courage. Begin to speak your truth. Even if your voice shakes, begin to let others see not just your light but your shadow, the part of you that will not be taken for granted. The third step is integration. This is where the empath becomes whole, no longer split between endless giving and silent resentment. As you walk this path, you may lose some people. Those who relied on your endless forgiveness may fall away, unable to handle your new strength. Let them go. Their absence is not a failure. It is a clearing. It makes space for relationships that are rooted in reciprocity, where love is not a transaction but a meeting of equals. You will also find that your dreams begin to shift. Where once you dreamed of drowning or being voiceless, now you may dream of climbing mountains, of flying, of standing before vast open landscapes. These dreams are messages from the unconscious, affirming your journey toward individuation. They are signs that you are no longer lost in the labyrinth, but are walking toward the center, the self, the wholeness that was always waiting for you. There comes a moment when the empath stands at a threshold, looking back at all the faces they have forgiven, all the moments they swallowed their own voice in order to keep the peace. This threshold is not the end, but the beginning. You may feel the weight of all those years, all those silent agreements where you told yourself, it's fine, I'll carry this burden, even when your heart whispered that it was not fine. But to step over this threshold is to reclaim something far greater than forgiveness. It is to reclaim your soul's sovereignty. I have seen how the psyche rebels when it has been ignored for too long. The unconscious will begin to speak in sharper ways through your body, through sudden bursts of emotion, through relationships that mirror your unspoken wounds. If you have been forgiving out of fear rather than love, your body will tell you. It may be the heaviness you wake up with, the tension in your chest, the constant fatigue that no amount of rest seems to cure. These are not random ailments. They are messages. Your body is the voice of the unconscious made flesh, telling you that the pattern of endless giving is unsustainable. The world has romanticized the empath as a figure of pure light, but this is a dangerous half-truth. Real empathy is not about being a constant vessel for others' pain. It is about having the courage to see the truth of another's suffering while still standing firmly in your own center. To forgive without this center is to give away pieces of yourself until one day you wake and realize there is nothing left but fragments. And yet, I tell you this not to fill you with despair, but to awaken you. For every fragment can be gathered, every piece reclaimed, and when they are brought together, they form something more powerful than you have ever known, a self that is whole, resilient, and deeply alive. In my studies of archetypes, I have often returned to the image of the wounded healer. This archetype carries within it both the gift of profound compassion and the danger of self-sacrifice. Many empaths embody this archetype without realizing it. They become healers by necessity, often because they themselves were wounded at a young age. They learned that to survive, they had to tend to the wounds of others' parents, siblings, friends, while ignoring their own. This early wound becomes the lens through which they see the world. They are drawn to those who are broken, because they recognize the reflection of their own brokenness. But here is what must be understood. The wound is not your identity. It is the doorway to your power, but only if you face it, tend to it, and refuse to let it define you. Forgiveness, when misused, becomes a way of avoiding this deeper work. You forgive quickly, thinking that to feel anger or grief is somehow wrong, when in truth these emotions are sacred messengers. They are not obstacles to healing, but pathways into it. Anger tells you where your boundaries have been crossed. Grief tells you what you have lost, what needs to be honored. If you skip these steps and rush to forgive, you bypass the very soul work that would make you whole. Do you see the cycle now? How each time you forgive without acknowledging your pain, you bury that pain deeper into the unconscious, where it grows into a shadow that will one day rise. This is why empaths often reach a breaking point, a moment of sudden collapse or awakening, when all the unspoken resentment, all the swallowed emotions come flooding to the surface. It feels like a storm, like the world itself is falling apart. But this storm is not destruction, it is liberation. It is the psyche's way of clearing the path so that you can finally see yourself in these moments. I urge you not to retreat back into your old patterns. Do not silence the storm with false forgiveness. Let it roar. Let it show you what is real. You may find that beneath the anger is a deep well of sadness. And beneath that sadness, a longing for the self you abandoned long ago. This longing is holy. It is the call of the self, the archetype of wholeness, inviting you to return home. You may ask, how do I remember who I am? The answer is both simple and profound. You begin by listening. Listen to your dreams, to your body, to the subtle stirrings of your own desires. Spend time alone, not as a punishment, but as a sanctuary. Many empaths fear solitude because they have built their worth on being there for others. But solitude is the crucible in which you meet yourself. It is where you hear the voice of your soul, which has been drowned out by the cries of everyone else. Imagine yourself standing in a quiet forest, far from the noise of the world. You feel the ground beneath your feet, solid and ancient. You hear the whisper of the wind, carrying secrets older than time. In this stillness, you begin to sense your own heartbeat, your own breath, your own presence. This is who you are, not the roles you play, not the pain you carry for others, but the living, breathing soul that existed long before anyone told you who you should be. This is the place from which true forgiveness arises, not the hurried, self-erasing forgiveness of the empath's curse, but the kind of forgiveness that springs from strength, from knowing that nothing anyone does can diminish your light. The journey back to yourself is not linear. There will be moments when you fall into old patterns, when you forgive too quickly, when you feel the pull of others' pain like a tide. Do not judge yourself for this. Each time you awaken to the pattern, you are gathering more light, more awareness. It is like descending into a cave with a single torch. Each realization illuminates another corner, until one day the darkness is gone, and you stand in the full radiance of who you are. There is also the matter of dreams, how they guide you, how they reflect your inner journey. When an empath begins to reclaim their selfhood, their dreams often shift from images of drowning or entanglement to images of flight, of standing on mountains, of finding lost treasures. These are symbols of integration of the soul, reclaiming its strength. Pay attention to these dreams. Write them down. They are messages from the unconscious, affirmations that you are on the right path, and do not underestimate the power of saying no. For many empaths, the word no feels like a betrayal, as if they are failing in their sacred duty to be compassionate. But no is a word of creation. It is a boundary that allows your soul to grow. Each time you say no to what drains you, you are saying yes to your own life. This is not selfishness, it is self-respect. It is the recognition that you are not here merely to survive the storm, but to rise like the phoenix, to burn away the patterns that no longer serve you, and to emerge whole. The curse of the empath is not that you feel too much, but that you forget where those feelings end and you begin to heal this. You must practice discerning what is yours and what is not. When you feel a heavy emotion, pause and ask, is this mine, or am I carrying it for someone else? This simple act of awareness is like drawing a line in the sand. Over time, you will begin to recognize the subtle difference between your own inner voice and the echoes of others. In the end, the path of the empath is not about rejecting your gift, but refining it. Empathy, when conscious, is a bridge to the soul of the world. It allows you to see the divine in others without losing sight of the divine in yourself. It teaches you that compassion and boundaries are not opposites, but partners. Together, they create a space where true healing can occur, not just for others, but for you. You have walked through the fire of understanding, and now we come to the heart of this truth. The empath's greatest challenge is not learning how to forgive, but learning how to remember themselves in the act of forgiving. True forgiveness is not about dissolving into another person's pain, nor is it about excusing what is inexcusable. It is about standing in the full light of your being and saying, I see what has happened. I see the shadow that caused it. And I choose to release it not because I am weak, but because I am strong enough to live free. This strength arises only when you face your own shadow. You must confront the part of you that wants to be endlessly needed. The part that fears being alone or unworthy if you stop giving. That part is not evil, but it is wounded. It is the child within you who learned long ago that love was conditional, that to receive affection, you had to be the caretaker, the forgiver, the one who swallowed pain so that others could smile. This child still lives within you, replaying the old script, but you are no longer that child. You have the power now to rewrite the story. To rewrite it, you must go deeper than the surface narrative of forgiveness. You must look at your relationships not through the lens of what you owe others, but through the lens of truth. Ask yourself, who am I when I am not fixing or forgiving? What do I desire? What lights the fire in my soul? These questions are not selfish. They are sacred. They call you back to the archetype of the self, that radiant core of consciousness that holds all your potential, all your forgotten dreams, all your untapped strength. In many myths, there is a journey into the underworld, a descent into the dark, where the hero must face trials before returning transformed. This is your underworld. It is the place where you meet the parts of yourself that you have banished in order to be loved. Your anger, your desire for freedom, your voice, these parts are not your enemies. They are guardians of your wholeness, waiting for you to recognize them. When you embrace them, you rise not as the wounded empath, but as the conscious healer, the one who can feel deeply without being consumed. The world will still test you. There will still be those who demand more than you can give, who will not understand your new boundaries. Some will call you selfish when you begin to say no. But their reaction is not a reflection of your worth. It is a sign that you are breaking the pattern, the old version of you, the one who forgave and gave without limit, fed their comfort. The new version of you, the one who stands in self-awareness, may unsettle them. Do not let this deter you. The people who truly love you will rise to meet you at this new depth. They will respect the lines you draw. And they will love you not just for what you give, but for who you are. I have often said that the shadow contains gold, and for the empath, that gold is the discovery of their own power. Power not as domination, but as the quiet certainty of one who knows their own soul. When you integrate this power, you no longer forgive from a place of fear or obligation. You forgive when it feels true. And you also know when not to forgive. You no longer confuse love with endless endurance. You begin to see that sometimes the most loving act is to walk away, to let another face their own darkness without carrying it for them. There is a sacred paradox here. The moment you stop forgiving out of compulsion is the moment you begin to feel true compassion. Because now it is not about erasing yourself, but about meeting life as a whole. Conscious being. You no longer forgive to earn love, but because love is already within you, flowing from the source of your own wholeness. This is the kind of love that heals without depleting, that shines without burning itself out. I want you to imagine standing before a mirror again, but this time the mirror reflects not the faces of others, but your own face, clear, radiant, alive. You see the lines of strength that suffering has etched into you, but you also see the light that has never been extinguished. You look into your own eyes, and for the first time, you recognize the soul that has been there all along. This is who you are, not the endless forgiver, not the shadow of other people's wounds, but a being of profound depth and power. If you truly listen, you will hear the voice of your soul speaking. Now you are not here to be consumed. You are here to live not just for others, but for yourself, for the dreams that call you, for the quiet moments that fill your heart with wonder. Live with boundaries that protect your inner world like sacred walls, not to shut others out, but to keep your essence intact. Live with the knowledge that saying no is sometimes the most profound act of love for it. honors both your truth and the truth of the other. The empath's gift is extraordinary, but it must be wielded with wisdom. Empathy without boundaries is like water with no riverbank. It floods and drowns. Empathy with consciousness, however, flows like a living stream, nourishing all it touches without losing its source. This is the balance you must cultivate. It begins by forgiving yourself for all the times you gave too much, for all the moments you lost yourself trying to be everything to everyone. Let that forgiveness wash over you now, not as a burden, but as liberation. Say to yourself, I forgive me. Feel the weight lift, and when you forgive yourself, you awaken to a new way of being. The archetypes that once ruled you, the martyr, the wounded healer, begin to transform. They no longer control you unconsciously. Instead, they become allies. The wounded healer becomes the conscious guide who knows when to give and when to step back. The martyr becomes the wise sage who understands that love is not proven by suffering, but by authenticity. You become not a reflection of others' needs, but a living flame, steady and bright. Do you see now how the curse dissolves? It was never a curse cast by the world, but a spell woven by your own unawareness. And awareness breaks it. Every time you pause before forgiving, every time you ask, is this true for me? You are breaking the old spell. Every time you say, no, I will not lose myself for this. You are weaving a new pattern, one of strength, clarity, and love. I leave you with this. There is no greater act of compassion than to live in the fullness of who you are. The world does not need you to be a hollow vessel of forgiveness. It needs you to be whole, to be alive, to shine your light, not as a reflection of pain, but as a beacon of what is possible when one remembers their true self. You are not here to forget who you are. You are here to remember, and in remembering, you will forgive in ways that heal without harm, that give without erasure, that love without losing. So stand tall, even when the world calls you too much or not enough. Stand in the knowing that your soul is vast, that your heart can hold both compassion and boundaries, both fire and water. This is your path, not the path of endless forgiveness, but the path of conscious love, rooted in the truth of who you are. And as you walk this path, the curse will transform into a blessing, for it will have led you here to the mirror, to the fire, to the rediscovery of your own soul.